Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth installment of the 2025 Phosphorescence Contemporary Poetry Series, produced by the Emily Dickinson Museum. Now, in its fifth year, this series brings you some of the most exciting contemporary poets we know, who've caught the spark of Emily Dickinson's own phosphorescent light. My name is Mary Folk, and I'm a director at the Emily Dickinson Museum. I'm also an enthusiastic writer and ardent admirer of Lesley Wheeler and Nadia, Alexis. I'm delighted and honored to be here tonight with you all and to celebrate these extraordinary poets. Before I introduce them, I have a few reminders for those of you watching on Zoom. And you'll observe that I'm referencing some notes to ensure I share with you all of the relevant information. We encourage you to use the chat feature in your Zoom app to share affirmations and words of encouragement and love and support for the poets. And feel free to start now by telling us where you're listening in from. And I see some of you has started already. We have people joining from Mexico, from Phoenix, from Indiana. So excited to be here, from Kansas, from Amherst, from Virginia. It's wonderful to see so many people touched by Emily Dickinson and excited to learn more about Lesley and Nadia. Tonight's readings will be followed by a Q&A, and I'll be looking for your questions in the type Q&A feature so that you can pose them to tonight's poets. You can find this in your Zoom toolbar, and you can place questions there at any time throughout the program. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce them to you. Lesley Wheeler, poetry editor of Shenandoah, is the author of Microcosmic, which launched in March 2025 through Tupelo Press. It was the runner-up for the Dorset Prize and her sixth poetry collection. Her other books include the hybrid memoir, Poetry's Possible Worlds, the novel Unbecoming, and two books of poetry scholarship, the first of which, The Poetics of Enclosure, roots its arguments in Dickinson's work. Wheeler's writing has received support from the Fulbright Foundation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, Breadloaf Environmental Writers Workshop, and the Sewanee Writers Workshop. Her poems and essays have appeared in Poetry, Poets and Writers, Kenyon Review Online, Ecotone, Guernica, Massachusetts Review, and elsewhere. Her website is lesleywheeler.org, and we'll be sure to put all the information in the chat for your review. Nadia Alexis is a poet, writer, and photographer born and raised in Harlem, New York City, to Haitian immigrants, and she currently resides in Mississippi. Her debut full-length collection of poetry and photography, Beyond the Watershed, was published with Cavern Press in March 2025, and it was also a finalist for the 2022 Ghost Peach Press Prize. Her writing and photography have been published widely, and she's received several awards and honors, including a 2025 Literary Arts Fellowship and a 2024 Artist Mini Grant from the Mississippi Arts Commission, a 2024 Mississippi Star Teacher Award, a 2024 Advanced Fellowship for the Natchez Literary and Cinema Celebration, the 2023 Poet of the Year honoree of the Haitian Creatives Digital Awards, a semifinalist position in the 2020 92nd Street Wide Discovery Poetry Contest, a nomination for the 2020 Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters Photography Award, and an honorable mention prize in the 2019 Hurst and Wright College Writers Award for Poetry. Nadia's photography has been exhibited in several shows in the US, Cuba, and virtually. A fellow of the Callaloo Creative Writing Workshop, the Watering Hole, and the Poets and Writers Get the Word Out Publicity Incubator. She holds a PhD and an MFA in creative writing from the University of Mississippi. Her website is www.bynadialexis.com. Now, time for some poetry. Lesley, would you like to begin the readings? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I so appreciate Anna and Mary and everybody at the Emily Dickinson Museum for the fabulous work that they do on this series. And it's just wonderful to be here. And thanks to all of you who are weighing in the chat. It's so nice to see so many names of friends and strangers in there. I'm wishing you well and great things wherever you are. I'm going to start with a poem from an older collection that's about Emily Dickinson. Then I'm going to read an Emily Dickinson poem, and then I'm going to read poems from my new book, Mycocosmic. I just want to tell you, too, that I should also have thanked Nadia for being in cahoots with me about this. Her new book, Beyond the Watershed, is fabulous, and you should totally go buy it right now. So the 10-year-old book is called Radioland. Um, I used to have a really long and boring highway commute. And while I was driving, I would have imaginary conversations with Emily Dickinson. And this is a poem about that. It's called Dead Poet in the Passenger Seat. An apparition flickers beside me, sepia projection in too few frames per second. Analog broadcast, broken as trees break light, discreet despite our slant rhyme. She's dazed by the persistence of her signal, but grows sharp as she plays with the radio knobs. Asks how one dreams and conjures while driving a carriage at shuddering speed. Observes, I'm not alive to the blurred show at the roadside. Plunge of hawk for carrion, stem staggering under seed. She warns, slow down. I carry on about parallel routes, the map no one uses. Her image goes snowy, faintly doubled. Does she regret her fine-stitched silences? Thinking of words, she slants forward as if against wind and wrings her hands. She says, oh yes, I do. Too many friends were ghosts, or I a ghost to them. But glancing at her eyes for just one attentive moment, glimpse the no, joyous, the banked up fire of her bound up hair. Her dash protracts, each inky line sizzles like a telephone wire. Connected the old way, alone. The Dickinson poem I'm going to read is I have an epigraph from it in my book, which has a mushroom theme. I'm going to read this poem aloud. It's called "The Mushroom is the Elf of Plants," or that's the first line, um, and and then make a little argument with the editors about how they've transcribed it, which is very impudent of me. But I've been thinking about this one a lot, and I wonder if they didn't get the handwriting quite right in one case. The mushroom is the elf of plants. At evening, it is not. At morning, in a truffled hut, it stop upon a spot as if it tarried always, and yet its whole career is shorter than a snake's delay, and fleeter than a tear. 'Tis vegetation's juggler, the germ of alibi, doth like bubble antedate, and like a bubble high. I feel as if the grass was pleased to have it intermit, this surreptitious scion of summer's circumspect. Had nature any supple face, or could she one contemn? Had nature an apostate, the mushroom, it is him. There's so much I like about this poem and the shifty pronouns and so many of the images. There's also a lot I don't get, frankly, even though I've spent a lot of time with Dickinson's work over a lot of years. But the one moment I find myself wanting to quibble with as I spend time with this poem is that bit about at morning in a truffled hut, its stop upon the spot. I was thinking about it, and I had just recently seen some chanterelles that have those ruffled caps. And of course, a truffle is a kind of fungus, but it's also um, the word ruffled is embedded in it. And so I started thinking, well, wouldn't a truffled hat make more sense? The hat like a cap. And I went to the library yesterday and I looked in the manuscript editions. And in fact, and I'm not an expert on Dickinson's handwriting, and all respect to the editors who made, I think, a reasonable decision. But the her lowercase a's look a lot like her lowercase u's. She doesn't quite, the curve at the top doesn't quite hit the straight line. And even the u's kind of curve over like that. So I think it's truffled hat. I think that had to be what she meant. So I just wanted to put that out there to be controversial. Mushrooms. I'm going to read a poem, the first couple poems in Microcosmic. And oh, I love it that somebody's convinced. That's great. I'm going to read the first two poems, and they're very different. And I'll read them and then talk about how, in my mind, they go together. I should explain, if you're not mushroom obsessed, that mycelium is the underground organism from which mushrooms occasionally fruit. So it's kind of the brain, it's the organism under there that sends out these little threads called hyphae, which help create the wood wide web and help plants connect to each other and send nutrients and messages back and forth. It's one of those poems that in which the title slides into the first line. It's called We Could Be. We could be mycelial, eating toxins together, decomposing what's still indigestible about this place, the singed taste. Could spread our soiled hands wide, vegetate, infiltrate, collaborate. Below ground, we could grow fat on loss, bust out in the wildest shapes, puffball, flagellate, our mistakes gorgeous in dispersal across polluted skies. Help me try. Extended release. The oxy hardly works at all. The refrigerator rings like a telephone. I hold her hand as another non-healer unwraps and anoints her flaming sores. Sores isn't right. They're craters or portals she keeps slipping through. Hospital, rehab, hospital, home. The visiting nurse with whom I've fallen in love whispers to my mother, "You're so strong." She's too tired to laugh. And to me, "You're doing a good job." I could weep, but I don't. My mother keeps yelling into the landline, "Somebody's at the door." I trash sour milk and a rotting pepper from the bottom drawer. She points at the ceiling whirlpools and asks, "What do you think I'll wear up there?" I dress her in a clean fleece nightgown. She feels so cold. Soon she can't lift her bruised hands. I call 911. When she opens her eyes to the EMT, she cries, "Oh, Les, what have you done?" Each new doctor halts that prayer of oxycodone. I should have brought pills, but I won't know how to daughter till I'm done. I swear that refrigerator's haunted. I'm writing this poem I'll never be able to read aloud after another transfer. "Can I have a bed?" she asks, while lying in one. She's in quarantine, but I hear she's refusing Ensure and those tiny cubed peaches, tender as blisters. She always thought people had a right to end their suffering. She never believed in heaven. "But I'm not going to that other," she tells me, raising the skin where her eyebrows would have been. "What's your favorite place?" she asks. I smell the ringing edge of the ocean. Hers is a garden. "But there can be a garden near a beach," I say, "full of tropical flowers. We can be neighbors." She might smile under palm fronds there, lit by hibiscus, full-bellied and finally warm. So my mother died in April of 2021, and there are plenty of poems in this book about that final passage and her death and the process of sorting through the cataclysm after. At the same time, and for a period of even a few years before and a few years after, I was I was reading a lot about mycelium and fungus and writing a lot of poems in which mushrooms were popping up. And I didn't really understand why. And I had this experience of trying to I was trying to put a book together and I was looking at the fungus poems and I was looking at the grief poems and I was thinking, how do these things go together? And at some point, I haven't had the epiphany that without fungus and the action of bacteria too, death would overwhelm the world, right? It was fungus that figured out how to break down the tough cell walls of lignin that holds trees up. So it made me realize that mycelium was kind of a muse for how I needed to metabolize death and turn that experience into something more nourishing. So there is, as I pulled all the poems together, one of the things I did is I wrote what I end up calling an underpoem. So it's um, basically you can see the lines at the bottom of the page underneath each poem. It's a single verse essay that runs through the whole book, a line at a time at the bottom of every poem, kind of mycelium. And there are lots of other underworlds in these poems as well. One of the things that surprised me about that period of a couple of years after my mother's death is that my poetry really changed. That I started to be franker about secrets I had kept, about sexuality and mental health, and also violence in my family. Because I knew that even though her formal education ended at age 16, she read everything I wrote and she had things to say about my poems. So, and I didn't realize how much that was keeping me silent about some things. This is a poem about one of those secrets. It's called An Underworld. I stopped my breath for as long as I could in the grit beneath my little brother's bed, afraid of my father. Even the dust would betray me if it dared. And what then? Pupils so flared a kid could hide in there. My mother loved but wouldn't save us, or didn't believe there was a passage out. My father's laughter scattered hail. His step cracked rifts in the ground. So, Shadow, what should I have done? Words make no shelter, lone or shared. Left him, left them, the darkness says. On the subject of phosphorescence, I've been giving a lot of readings this spring, like Nadia. Our books came out on the same date, March 4th. And there are certain poems I usually read, and then there I always throw something in there I haven't tried before. And I realized this poem has phosphorescence in it, so I should read it. It's called Early Cretaceous Swims Up to the Bar, and it was inspired. I was at a writers' conference, and I was walking in Tampa, and I was walking along the river with a couple of other writers, and this long, skinny, strange-looking fish swam by, which must have been an alligator gar. They're common there. But it was phosphorescent, and we spent a while trying to get our heads around how that could possibly be. For weeks, a part of me stayed at current's edge, peering down, dark to dark, pondering the phosphorescent gar haunting the Hillsborough River, although sources said there was no such thing. The memory stayed on like ink or hankering. Enigma snouted and stalked inside me, nocturnal, torpedo-shaped dun submerged relic, ganoid scales impenetrable, its fossil of a nose aglow. A smallish alligator gar, surely, exciting tiny bioluminescent creatures by its skulking, ignoring the greenish flash as, always hungry, it strives to plug that spiral valve intestine with gizzard shad, unsuspecting waterfowl, stray engine parts. Its emptiness fills me, frank appetite with a double row of obscure teeth, magnificent, indifferent to light. If only I could wear a skin of fire. I'm also going to read an outtake, a poem I wrote during the same time that I didn't include in the book in the end. It's a Dickinson poem, and I ended up thinking that it was maybe a little too cryptic and maybe not connected enough to the main themes of the book. But I was in spring 2020. I was virtually teaching a class on Whitman and Dickinson, and um, I came across this poem. The first stanza of which is alone and in a circumstance, reluctant to be told, a spider on my reticence assiduously crawled. So sort of a creepy poem, but that phrase alone and in a circumstance became the title of a poem I drafted that was kind of thinking through that spider image. And, you know, a lot of us who had the privilege of working at home during the pandemic and a lot of writers for sure were thinking about Dickinson during that moment and her isolation and how that isolation can foster and harm a writer's practice. Um, so this is that poem. It did appear in the magazine Interim, although it's not in the book. Alone and in a circumstance. Check for an angle that conceals the spider on my reticence. Prop a fat addition under the screen for partial invisibility. Now everyone seeks the doctor's examination by flitting past a half-closed door. Absent-heartedness, time's larceny. Each day creeps by arthropodically. Later there sits a slip-jacketed hardback, nest of arachnid dashes. I open to a poem I've never understood. It's crawling with variance. Syllables can be hospitable concavities hammocked by webs of a distant person's thinking. Sticking there is the only free thing. Um, uh, Literally, to make my zoom angle better, I used to put the Variorum edition of by Johnson of Emily Dickinson's poems. So I propped up the screen, and that's alluded to in this poem. But also my sense of one of the things I go to poetry for is its intimacy, despite huge gaps of time and geography. And Dickinson is particularly a poet that when I read her, I feel like I'm connecting mind to mind, which is why I was having imaginary conversations with her in my car when I was driving, right? Like I have a sense of her presence sometimes. I'm going to read just one last poem from Microcosmic and then gladly yield the stage to Nadia. It's called Return Path. I sometimes call it a dirty villanelle, both because it's got dirt in it, but also because I'm messing with the villanelle rules a little bit. Return Path. And thank you. Thank you for listening. The only way to pray is through my feet, earthward, jolted in return by the fizz of a spiking current. I never thought a circuit would loop through me, believed I was separate, alone, done with gods. But here it is. I found a way to pray. Through my feet, I reach down. There's something animate, mycelial, that touches me back. It's a species of love, a thinking spike, a zinging circuit of energy and dirt, blood and spirit, plutonic conversation, mostly wordless. The way I found to pray is through my feet, soul bared to wooden boards or rug or slate or buggy grass, just as you want to press skin to a beloved's, sparking a current, a circuit. Not that Earth loves me, exactly. Matters what matters. She wants me to return the mess of my only body, pray from head through feet as I sink, unthinking ash, into love circuit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lesley. Just stunning, just absolutely beautiful. So much to linger in. And thank you for sharing your anecdotes about Emily Dickinson. Nadia, would you like to continue the reading? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Can y'all hear me? I feel like my mic. Can y'all hear me? Yes? Okay, good. I don't see the green, so that's why I was like, is it on? Okay. I'm going to read poems from my debut book, uh, Beyond the Watershed. And actually, I'm going to start off with a Dickinson poem first. And maybe it's one of her more legible poems. Um, it's called The Sea of Sunset. This is the land the sunset washes. These are the banks of the yellow sea, where it rose or whither it rushes. These are the western mystery. Night after night, her purple traffic strews the landing with opal veils. Merchantmen poise upon horizons, dip and vanish with fairy sails. Watershed. I arrive at my father's feet, a dying mapu tree. You know what? I'm going to pause and say that a mapu tree in Haitian culture, Haitian voodoo, is seen as a spiritual tree. It's like a connector between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. And so I just want to tell y'all that before I enter the poem. And I'm going to start over. Watershed. I arrive at my father's feet, a dying mapu tree. He covers his eyes with mud while goats feast on my fallen hair. I hear my mother call for the Lord to send just enough rain for our lungs and her carnations to see a new season. My mother always said boys are best at taking. I once loved a boy who turned pomegranates in my yard into salt. In the mirror, I see a donkey's head without a home. Daisies dance atop her hair, and she teaches me how to wail for cover. My mother and I kneel on uncooked rice. Sweat of our hands no longer remembers its owner. Our knees become prunes. One night I see my father weep and rock like a forgotten river. How he must know what it's like to fight against disappearance. The longer I stay in the home my lover and I built on this mountain, the more I tire of circadian leaps into the field of cacti. Every year, Lake Azuye rises and forces change on the trees and birds and people of the watershed. They no longer believe the water will leave them. I spend nights running from hail and company of vultures. I make peace with the ways my father and I look away from errors and ruin. My parents make rituals of warnings and I follow in their footsteps anyway. But my mother says I can build a new home from clouds, and I believe her. Cantaloupe. Um, I grew up eating cantaloupe a lot, and some of my friends thought I was weird for that, but that's what we were. It's like it's like you grew up eating a certain thing and you like the taste, and maybe other people don't. But um, anyway, cantaloupe. This is a two-part poem. I am 10 the first time Ma let me split the skin of a cantaloupe without her. My knee still bandaged and burning from a fall I took on the playground that day. While playing tag, a classmate pushes me like she wants the ground to remember it. I don't push back, tell my teacher instead and declare I wish it was a half day. When I get home, I tell Ma I'm aching for sugar and numbing. So she hands me a knife and I lay the tough skin fruit on its side, cut the two shortest ends, watch them fall like playing cards. I think back to the breaking, stand it upright to make it into a split sun. Ma offers to redress my wound in ointment. I dig up and toss innards like they're memories I want to bury. There is no aloe vera here. Cut and cut and cut until cantaloupe flesh resembles square-shaped Lego bricks. Devour several slices before I place the others to rest in our Tupperware. 2. My sisters and I climb the plastic-adorned couch in our living room. Mountains of clothes and blankets all over the rug for extra cushion. Today we dive into an ocean, bellies full of fruit blessings and minds still on fire from a story Ma told us about a black girl in Harlem who could fly like a bird. We want to turn into dolphins and fly. We know we can wish this, feet steadied, hands on each other's shoulders, knees bent for the journey. There is nothing like the thirst of Black girls who believe in their own dreams. Cantaloupe juice can only quench so much. We fly and dive into the water we built, bellies pointed up and down as we lie with bodies transformed into wind. I don't own any watches. My lover told the air not to come around here anymore. It doesn't matter that I wear the pleading so well, how my chest holds a sickness only my lover's watch could have implanted. Saturday morning and no Ray in sight as he sits in a dorm room chair just big enough to keep him from falling. He calls me over, gives me 10 seconds or he'll teach me an old lesson. The skin surrounding my right eye is still dyed black from his fist the last time his voice fell from his lips that way. 10. Lord, where are your arms? 9. Will today be the day dead bees fall out of me? 8. The inner winding organs rest with hunger. 7. How many bald hands will it take to collapse into numbers? 6. His foot tap against the floor sounds like sunken birds. 5. Will I remember what it feels like to be a woman lodged in an occasional love? 4. I want to be soft beyond the orbit of these veins. 3. I'm ready to bury the gamble. 2. Who has the recipe for making a feast with scraps of time? 1. I sprint to his Arctic lap. Can he hear me conjure his wrists disappeared into wildfire? Language. This is a palindrome poem, so the second half of the poem mirrors the first half of it, and the lines are in reverse. Language. The ocean swallowed a father, my father's father whole. His father ate too many hearts of chicken and women. He ate his children, my father one of them. By the time my mother and father walked by the same tree, he was born again into new skins. My father is multilingual. He knows the cadence of clouds after murmuration, the language, algebra equations, American English, rough hands, Haitian Creole, turnbacks, and laughter. He taught me how to eat the sun in my own tongue. How to eat the sun in my own tongue. Turnbacks and laughter. He taught me English, rough hands, Haitian Creole, algebra equations, American after murmuration. The language, he knows the cadence of clouds into new skins. My father is multilingual. By the same tree, he was born again by the time my mother and father met his children. My father, one of them. Too many hearts of chicken and women. He ate my father's father whole. His father ate the ocean and swallowed a father. One thing I'll say about that poem before I move on to the next couple is that when I got feedback in workshop, there were some people that didn't understand aspects of it and wanted me to revise and change. And I'm just really glad I didn't do that because I think sometimes the poems just come out in a way that it's not meant to necessarily make all the way sense in your head, but maybe in your heart or your spirit. And I was drawn to the palindrome because I felt like it was a form that would allow me to lean into strangeness or and so that's part of what I like about Emily Dickinson's work as well. Um, this one is called Suppose You Failed to Cover Your Mouth and So Evil Spirits Flew Out of Your Body. And one thing I'll say, there's mention of zombies in this poem, and I'm thinking of Haitian zombies and not like, scary movie zombies, which Haitian zombies are kind of scary too. It's a similar idea, but it's more spiritual. So, just want to say that. Suppose you failed to cover your mouth, and so evil spirits flew out of your body, and your throat became an abandoned rose garden beneath the blue storm of your mouth. And one spirit is the man who killed your mother under a wolf moon in the middle of the 10th blackout of the summer. And he struck her with enough help from serpents and zombies hiding in New York City alleys after long days of searching for sugar and freedom. Or maybe there was the spirit of the woman who fly through the night sky with wings made of her sleeping brethren's dreams, and pieces of the river with her, building a new shed on mullets and pebbles and mountain song and blood of women washing their best. Or maybe there are spirits who are sisters who traded bird and sun-loved skin and laughter and candy air, who tended to each other's bruised backs and ruptured tongue with mango innards. And maybe in the midst of this, you forget to use your palms and forearms to shield yourself from a voracious fall. Um, Thank you for the love in the comments. I'm not looking at it, but I can't wait to. I'm going to read two more. One of them is a epistolary poem that I wrote during the pandemic, where it was really hard for me to write. I'm from New York, and that's where my family was at during that time. So it was hard for me to focus on anything other than the fact that they were at what was considered ground zero. So I would take walks, and that would help me to write sometimes. Letter to my friend Robert. This morning I wanted to write, so I changed into my outside clothes, unlocked the door, and walked onto my block where I thought of my father, whose favorite hobby is walking up and down and around the streets of Harlem against my understanding, until today when I find myself seeking some kind of fire in the air, and now I'm a couple of blocks and beats of birdsong away from my Mississippi doorstep, passing by a fenced-in white dog who barks and growls at me like she believes I've taken something, or she is displeased with unshuttered windows, absent of human bodies, peering through to see about her. And oh, how green it is today that I am almost in disbelief at how nature changes in a matter of hours, or the weeks It's been since I returned to the mouth of this trail on a chilly, overcast afternoon. I was met with down trees strewn about as if all that mattered was their continued proximity to home. And this comforted me despite my deepest love being them standing alive. And today I'm convinced some God came by and dropped off a new forest and new eyes for those who beg for relief as sudden as this vision I have of an imaginary father addicted to walking because it lets him time travel to other worlds, almost like watching a film. And some days he doesn't know what he'll get. And maybe there's magic in not knowing that one day you could arrive at the heart of a lake and there are guitars and drums and keyboards floating in the breeze, playing tunes that feel familiar and unfamiliar, and you can dance and pray to the edge of a fallen leaf. Turn yourself inside out. And oh, Robert, this trail is a whisperer and a mirror I wish you could see. And please do tell if you have a spot in Brooklyn like this trail that implores me to take what I need and leave an offering if I have one to give. And journey back to myself to arrive at a blank page and call it green, call it mockingbird, call it train, call it break, call it bloom. The last poem I read is called Prayer to Ezividanto number 5. And Ezividanto is a Haitian voodoo spirit who's seen as the mother of Haiti, a protector of women and children who are victims of abuse. And she was also one of the important figures that helped the Haitian people to get their independence from France during the Haitian Revolution. Prayer to Ezeli. So I have 6 of these in the book, rather. I won't read them all. I'm just going to read one, but they are connected by the last line becomes the first line of the next poem. And they're dispersed throughout. So Prayer to Ezeli Danto number 5. In my dreams, I run across the ocean and become more woman with each wave. Something like you. I fly bruiseless and renewed by the blue suns. Assemblies of mothers and daughters sing and laugh big until we fly hand in hand. We sweat and become our own guava horizons. Every coconut tree is a city that welcomes us. No one tries to take the moon from our teeth. In this world, we don't have to lower our heads or bend. Everywhere we go, so does the water. Our hair shimmies at the clouds and makes song with the wind. No rape, no black eyes, no pockets or souls sucked dry. No one to lead us away from this home. Everything we can dream is blooming and true. Thank you.
Thank you both. Let's show them lots of love and encouragement right now. It's just stunning. Thank you. So now we have a little bit of time for some questions. I have a few, and we have a few that have already been posed. And please add your questions to the Q&A in your Zoom app. One question we got from Beth for both of you. Have you ever been surprised by the final result of a poem? If so, in what way? And that speaks to a little bit about process and craft and maybe how you begin. And that was one question I had for you both, is where did your poems begin? What are sort of some of the origin stories for this work?
Nadia, you want to go first or shall I?
I can go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple poems in mind that kind of surprised me where they ended up going. The Watershed poem is one of them. It was the last poem I wrote to complete my thesis, and I was like, I need something that's going to be kind of like the roadmap poem, but I really didn't know where it was going to go. I just had watershed. I had the word watershed, and I was like, okay, well, let's see where it goes. And so that completely surprised me. It didn't surprise me in terms of my writing style. It still fit in my writing style, but I just didn't know where it was going to go. So I really enjoyed writing that poem and revising it, and I actually didn't revise it very much. I do revise my poems a lot, but I didn't revise that one very much. And then the palindrome was a delight for me, to see those lines in reverse and how it kind of opened up the poem a bit in an interesting way. So I gave you two poems. Where do my poems begin? It kind of depends. Maybe sometimes it's with an image, like a word. Um, there is a longing to. I always have something to say when I sit down to write, but I don't always know what I want to say or where it's going to end up. So it's like a longing, an image, reading someone else's poem and it inspired me. Or, sometimes I would take, open a book on my bookshelf and use a line as a writing prompt. So there's a lot of places. And I think for me, writing this book was important because of the topics that it covers and domestic violence and healing, but also aspects of Black girlhood that aren't necessarily tied to trauma. And then also having photographs in the book was important to kind of show the layered aspect of the human experience. And so that's kind of what I seek to do when I sit down to write and to read other people's poems, Dickinson included. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I love the way that the photographs work in relation to the poem, and there's almost a visual narrative of emergence that, as you look at them together, that is wonderful to me. And Beth, I think that was a fantastic question. I always think that the hardest thing about a poem is finding an ending that both feels surprising but also feels right. Like the poem has led up to this place where that you wouldn't have expected it to go, and yet it somehow does. And I am, I try to get there, and I don't always. I write a lot more poems than I end up giving homes to in magazines or books, but yeah, I think that writing is each poem is a sort of archaeological dig where you're trying to get a little deeper into the material and find something that you didn't know was there, and you learn about yourself and you learn about whatever you might be researching maybe. And I would say, and I was thinking about this reading Nadia's work and listening to those poems, is that uh, there's there's a reaching for connection again and again. And I loved, it was helpful to me what you said about the mapu tree at the beginning, that connecting two worlds, that reaching for spiritual connection and the poem as prayer. It seems to me that that question is connected to that idea too. Like if you reach out, what answers?
Thank
I
you.
think,
I
yeah.
When I was reading your book, I was really struck by the I saw them as like footnotes, but not footnotes. Initially, I was like, "Oh, are these footnotes?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." I really think that that was like a brilliant idea and a way to kind of expand on the poems. And um, I was reading the poems and I thought about death and grief, but I also thought, in a weird way, humor. I think in some of the, which I feel like it's so interesting to think about. It feels like it makes sense. Like, when you think about like joy and pain. And so if you can talk a bit about like the emotional um, register, I guess briefly. I know we're like short on time, but I was really curious about like,
Yeah.
the idea of mushrooms and all that. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Can I add to that too? I just think
Yes, yes.
both I was interested in that too, in both of your
Hmm.
collections, which have been such a gift to read and spend time with. You hold, you know, trauma and transformation, grief, and hope. And so how do you hold that tension in your work and in your craft and in your process?
I think there's another poet who's important to me is Marianne Moore, and in her poem, The Pangolin, she's got this line, humor saves a few steps, it saves years. And I think humor, like hope, is a saving thing that, finding, this is a moment where there's so much suffering, and finding moments of joy is, it's indispensable to getting through. To me, one of the things that's been fun about sharing this book with people is I've learned a lot more about mycologists and people who do mushroom podcasts and run mycological societies. And there's this whole world of scientifically oriented people who are sort of spectacularly open-minded and full of questions. Mushroom people are really, really great. And um, I didn't realize how much sort of humor and warmth I'd find there. But to me, that one of the things that's really striking when you read people who, like Paul Stamets, who made the documentary Fantastic Fungi, or so many of the other people who write about fungus in various ways, um, they see fungus as the thing that's going to save the world from ecological collapse. That it can absorb pollutants. You can make materials out of it that are alternatives to plastic. You can. It's just there's an enormous potential in this world of research that's really just getting underway. And it is hopeful, but also the idea of that we're all connected, maybe in ways that we can't see, is also it gives me hope, and it's maybe an inspiration for people who don't feel able to speak out right now. That there are ways that we're connected and we can support each other anyway.
Yeah, I'll just briefly add. I feel like there are things that help you to keep going in life, right? When you're going through traumatic experiences. And so, and also, I feel like it's more honest to portray light in the speaker's experiences, moments of light. I'm also thinking about my reader, particularly anyone who might be a survivor as well, and the kind of experience that I want them to have, and how do I want them to feel by the end of the book. Um, and I also wanted to incorporate moments of resistance or feeling of that, this idea that um, that there's something worth fighting for, and that the speaker, she believes that there's a better someday that she'll arrive to. So it's like a care for the reader as well as myself, and just also wanted to make the poetry book interesting too, more interesting.
I wanted to go back to just quickly referencing Emily Dickinson in preparation for tonight. The three of us talked a little bit about a poem you found particularly transformative, which I think is giving people a lot of meaning right now. And that poem is "This World Is Not Conclusion." So what is it about this poem that you found sort of resonant? And then more broadly, why do you feel Emily Dickinson is so significant today and has such meaning?
Well, I will say that something, our books are different, I think, but I do think that they both have uh, an interest in the spiritual that emerges pretty strongly. And Nadia and I were on a panel together at the New Orleans Poetry Festival this past spring called Sacred and Somatic, in which we started a conversation, which I think we all felt like it could have gone on for hours and hours, right? But the relationship between the sacred and embodiment, um, uh, there, I think that's an endlessly rich series of connections there to think through. All right, that's a partial answer maybe, but let's hear from Nadia.
I think I think about like longing when I think about that poem. Also duality, and not necessarily, I don't know, I think thinking about spirit and spirituality, I mean, we don't necessarily know that there is a God out there, but at the same time we do. And so that poem is, those are some of the words that come to mind when I think about that poem. And it feels spiritual to me in a way because there is um, when I think about spiritual realm, I think about it containing a lot. It not necessarily being something that we can fully understand or grasp, or maybe we can, and then it kind of disappears. So it's, I don't know, that kind of explains what I think of when I think about that poem, just to add to what Lesley was talking about.
Yeah, if I'm remembering right, the one end stopped line, the one period in that poem is at the end of the first line. This world is not
Mm-hmm.
conclusion, period. And
Mm-hmm.
right, so that's the one thing she knows, that what's visible to
Mm-hmm.
me is not everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's more than what's visible, and that's a profound idea that speaks to me. And of course, it's not just in that poem; it's all through her work.
Yeah, I think her poetry helps us to see that, um,
Yeah.
how much there is to the world and us.
I think, sadly, I think we only have time for one more question. And the question is, what is bringing you hope? The thing with feathers right now.
Connection, connection, and the joy I still take in certain relationships I treasure, the joy I take in reading and listening to other writers. Those are really precious things to me. And if fungus is going to save the world, yay for fungus! I'm really happy about that too.
Art is giving me hope, all kinds of art. I teach at an arts high school, so art gives me hope. The sun, the trees, the birds, my community, my ancestors, lots of spiritual things. And I give myself hope.
Mm-hmm. I want to spend an hour talking about that.
I know. I feel like we could spend 3 days in conversation together. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to both of you. And thank you to this evening's poets, Lesley Wheeler and Nadia Alexis. What a gift this has been. It's just, as I mentioned, it's just been such an honor to spend time with you and your work and your craft. So thank you. And we want to thank all the listeners out there. I hope you'll go online to learn more about these poets and check out their work. I also wanted to mention, I hope that you'll consider adding their books to your list for the upcoming Seeley Challenge, which is a community challenge to read one book of poetry a day for the month of August. And we'll put some information about the Seeley Challenge in the chat. We'll be back with another Phosphorescence reading next month when we'll hear from Kathy Lynn Che, Monica Ong, and Lee Ann Rohrapal. In the meantime, please come visit us in Amherst. Come take tours of the Dickinson Homestead and the Evergreens. And excitingly, you can also now head to our website to see the lineup and register for the 13th annual 2025 Tell It Slant Poetry Festival coming up in September. This is a full week of in-person, online, and hybrid events. And you definitely won't want to miss our festival headliners, Terrence Hayes and Kristen Hill. To learn about these and all of our other events, to subscribe to the museum's monthly newsletter, or to make a donation to the museum in support of free programs like this one, please visit our website, www.emilydickinsonmuseum.org. Thank you, poets. Thank you all.